Hey everybody, my name is Paul Esden Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com, and we're streaming live simultaneously in 3 different places, everybody. That's a Heavy on Jets Facebook page to over 20,000 Jet fans. Thank you so much, guys, for spending a little part of your day with us. Of course, on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25, all kinds of New York Jets, great content, live streams, and fun chats. And of course, on my Twitter account, you guys can find that at BoyGreen25. And as a healthy reminder, this is an interactive program, so feel free to get involved. I'm about to welcome in our special guest for today's show, but feel free to jump into the comments again, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we'll get those comments in on the show, whether it's just topics of conversation or what have you, because today we're going behind enemy lines to preview the New York Jets-Miami Dolphins matchup. And for the first time in a while, it means something, not draft implications. Hell no. It's about actual division implications. That's something, quite frankly, I am not familiar with. So this is new territory for me. Let's bring him in. This is my main squeeze. Every time the Jets and Dolphins play, there's only one man that I go to, and that is Brian Miller of Fin Fanatic, our fan-sided sister site. Feel free to check it out for all the Miami Dolphins content as we head in to this Week 5 matchup. Without further ado, let's bring him in. The man, the myth, the legend, Brian Miller jumps on your digital screens.
You are so too kind, Paul. How's the baby girl doing, by the way?
Oh, she is fantastic. Fortunately, we've worked out a great schedule between me and my fiance that she's like, oh, you're doing all the crazy Jet stuff. All right, we're going to go out of the house. We're going to go for a walk, and we're going to leave you for several hours. That's probably the right move for everybody involved, but she's doing spectacular. Just turned 8 months, about a week and a half ago. So it is time is flying, man, and I feel the same way with us. That every year we link up at least twice, and we chat and have these conversations. But it feels like it was just last week, and there's a lot of different things that are happening for both of us. First off, we got to go right to the tip of the cap. The Dolphins at 3-1, coulda, shoulda, woulda been at 4-0. Wow, Brian, what a start to the season for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, we could sit here and play the woulda, shoulda game. I mean, the Dolphins lost. Teddy Bridgewater with the late interception that kind of sealed that game. But, one thing that we've learned over the course of the first 4 weeks is you can't sit there and think, what if? You have to go out and play. You can look at the Bills. They lost in Miami, and the fans are still complaining.
Yeah.
I sent out a tweet last week that I apologize to all the Jets fans out there.
Oh, wow.
I did. I said, you know what? My opinion of you is a lot higher than they are of the Bills fans, because those people just are relentless and don't get it. So, the misery that we've shared all these years doesn't go to our head.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody expected the Dolphins to be 3-1. Everybody kind of figured we'd beat the Patriots, lose big to the Ravens. And had it not been for that fourth quarter, we would have. But here we are at 3-1, and now, we're facing more adversity, so we'll see what happens next.
Well, Brian, of course, just from a human perspective, one of my first questions on here is, how is Tua doing? That, I'm going to be honest, as a former football player, obviously nowhere near the NFL level, I've had a lot of concussions in my life. One was so bad that I couldn't speak for hours. When people asked me questions, I was just blah, 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 blah. And it was serious. And so I'm going to be, it's a special place in my heart anytime I see anyone go through any transgressions through a concussion, and in prime time, in the worst possible spot. We saw the fencing maneuver as well with him, with how hard and intense it seemed to be. How is just beyond just football here, Brian, just Tua as a human being, how is he doing right now?
From all indications, he's doing fine. He's cleared most of the MRI came back negative. His tests in Cincinnati after the incident were cleared, and they were able to send him back. So everything's come back normal. CT scan, from what I understand, has been normal as well. Now, I have a medical background, so I'm like you.
Great. Yeah, right.
I have been punched and kicked around and have suffered many concussions. I've had a helmet cut off my head during a game.
Wow.
Because the side of my head swelled up. So I've been through those hits. And I've spent the last 22 years as a paramedic dealing with, high-end critical care cases. I've worked in neurological recovery floors. So I've seen this. Nothing that happened on Sunday against the Bills, nothing that happened Thursday night concerned me. As a paramedic, as a fan, as a former football player, I know that may not sit well with some, but, given my medical training, I was a heck of a lot better paramedic than I am a writer. So I'm going to tell you real quick. But you don't spend that long in a field and not have an understanding. So when I saw him go down, the fencing of his fingers when it's all contorted is something that happens from time to time when a player loses consciousness in a concussion situation. So whether it is a motorcycle accident, a car accident, whether it's falling off of a ladder in somebody's yard and hitting your head, that is not uncommon. So while I'm sitting there watching it, my brother's screaming, on our messages, he's having a seizure. And I'm like, he's not having a seizure. It's rare, but it does happen. And it depends on how you hit. Does it have anything to do with what happened on Sunday? Absolutely not. Even if he had a concussion last Sunday, that what happened to him on Thursday night is completely separate. It did not make it worse. It did not make it better. It did not make him more inclined to have it. Given the fact that he cleared all of the protocols between not just going back into the game on Sunday, but every test that was administered for the 5 days after leading up to that game, he was able to pass. So when you get into the game and you see this happening, you got to look at the severity of the slam, is what I call it, because I don't see him being hit. He was slammed to the ground pretty hard.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that his body hit the ground. So it was shoulder pad, the back of the head, and the back of the neck. So that's where my concern would have been. But I didn't look at it and go, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing in the world that could ever happen. Because I've seen this stuff before. It looked a lot worse than it absolutely was. And we're finding out now that, there's some clear paths that he's still got to go through. If I'm the Dolphins, I'm not bringing him back this week. Obviously, he's not playing, but I wouldn't bring him back next week either.
Yeah, let me ask you that. That was very interesting because, Robert Saleh on the Jets side, when it comes to injuries, he has played coy with the media. Even if somebody, it may be clearly out at the beginning of a week, at least historically in this small sample size, he'd say something like, we'll see day to day. We'll find out what happens. And then at some point later in the week, whether it's gamesmanship or what have you, we'll truly find out. Mike McDaniel wasted no time. On his Monday press conference, he was straight up. Yeah, Tua is out this week, concussion protocol. He's out. It's Teddy Bridgewater. Were you surprised that there was that level of conviction right from the get-go? Is that simply, hey, that's just how the Dolphins saw it, and that's what they're doing? Because there's a lot of conspiracy out there, that a lot of NFL pressure to say, hey, just sit him this week no matter what. There's optics and other things at play here. What do you say to all those people that have aluminum foil wrapped around their head?
Well, I think definitely this was determined probably Friday. I think they realized, he's not going to play. We're going to play this safe. Mm-hmm. Do they need to postpone it? I think Mike McDaniel will play that game that Saleh's playing. A lot of coaches do.
Yeah,
it's normal. Yeah. In this situation, no, I don't think so, only because the pressure from the outside, the media, and all of this, you're just creating, by not coming out and saying it, you're creating more focus on that. What are they going to do? It's negative publicity that they didn't need. He was able to nip this in the bud right now and say, nope, this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And, like he said today, somebody asked him in his press conference if he's concerned about what's being said out there. And he said, it'd be upsetting. It would be troubling and crumbling if it was coming from people within the organization and people that I am here to service. And it's not. So now you're talking about caving in basically to the ESPN talking heads. You're caving into the Dr. Amahu or whatever his name is, the neurologist, and all these other people that say you shouldn't play. You know what? He took an opportunity to get rid of the negative press, let the NFL do their investigation, let the NFLPA do their investigation, and concentrate on this week without having to be bombarded by questions. So I think that's why he did it.
And let me ask you bluntly here, Brian. So again, no Tua this week. Again, we'll see what happens, to your point, with future weeks. So it's Teddy Bridgewater. What is your confidence level, both you and maybe even the pulse of the fans, if you've gathered that yet early in game week here? What is the confidence level in Teddy Bridgewater to step in and for this offense to not really skip a beat with all the weapons that they do have?
Skipping a beat is the question I have. Teddy Bridgewater's not going to play to the same speed that Tua did. He got the ball out of his hands less than 2.5 seconds every play. That's not Teddy Bridgewater's game. Bridgewater said to the media today that he is not playing like Tua because he's not Tua. Same way he wasn't Drew Brees when he took over in New Orleans. So I'm not sure what to expect. I can't go off of what I saw in the one series against the Bills, and I can't go off of what I saw in the second half of the game against the Bengals because the plays weren't catered to Teddy Bridgewater. They weren't designed for him. We saw some plays on Thursday night that we've never seen Tua run before. So I definitely think that there was a different offensive system starting to be implemented on Thursday night, kind of a throwaway. We saw some runs to Chase Edmonds that we haven't seen before. This week is going to be interesting because there's 10 days in between games. So we're going to see the Dolphins. I think the Jets may be at a bigger disadvantage than my opinion, to be honest with you, because you guys don't know what the Dolphins are going to come out and run because you don't have any film on Teddy Bridgewater in this system.
Right. No.
So what's my confidence level? I trust that Bridgewater's not a bad quarterback. Mm-hmm. He's got starting experience. He's going to be prepared for the game. That's never been the knock on him. So for me, seeing Teddy go into the game as a starter, I'm probably more confident in that than how I was Thursday night when he went in as a backup, because I didn't think he could go in on that system and how they prepared to play that game with no notice. And they were coming off of 4 days, basically, on a short week. Now you're putting him in there with the system that was thrown together at the last minute. So it'll be interesting. I think there's a lot of fans that are going to be sitting there watching the first half going, what are we going to see? What are we going to see? So confidence level, I don't know, it's above 50% confidence, but I'm not going to go all in yet.
That's kind of, to be honest, because again, sometimes when you have, questions in your head, I have an expectation what the answer would be. And that's kind of what I thought. Again, Teddy Bridgewater, I don't think is a bad quarterback at all. Again, former Jets quarterback revenge game. Yeah. Throw that out there, people. Let's get that out on the docket for his checks notes 4 months with the team. But I think he is just going to be a guy that can do what needs to be done. Again, we'll have to see with the system, but I agree with you. I feel more confident in his ability with the full week of preparation and a game plan built around what Teddy Bridgewater does. Again, Mike McDaniel is fantastic, and we'll get into him, but I think he's going to do a really good job of playing to whatever Teddy's strengths are within the realm of the offense. And I think that will be a good place, which leads me to my next point here, Brian. This is a very interesting new chapter in this Jets-Dolphins rivalry, and Mike McDaniel knows Robert Saleh intimately well. Robert Saleh knows McDaniel intimately well. All in all, they've spent 7 actual NFL seasons together between their time together with the Texans and their time, of course, together with the San Francisco 49ers. Brian, who has the advantage? Robert Saleh knows the creative stuff that McDaniel comes up with, and vice versa with Saleh's scheme. They are so close together. It's not like they spent a bunch of time together 400 years ago. They spent 4 seasons back to back to back together in San Francisco before each of them moved on to these tenures in the AFC East.
Well, as a guy who's coached defenses and as a guy who's played defensively, I would give the advantage to McDaniel, only for the reason that when you coach a defense, you tend to change up a few things. You might run a different blitz scheme. You might run a couple of different, you might shuffle some defensive players around. You might run a couple of quick hits, or you change a gap assignment or something like that. Maybe you run a stunt. But offensively, if you know what you're facing as a defensive mind, and you're somebody who is a little bit more analytical with your offense, you can design an offense that he hasn't seen before. You kind of get an idea of what he might want to do. If I'm Saleh, I'm sitting there and I'm going, I really don't know what Mike McDaniel's going to throw, because what we're seeing so far out of the Dolphins offense, nobody's really kind of had an answer for. Buffalo's defense was great, and they did a good job of keeping Hill and Waddle in check for most of the game. But he just walked onto the sideline and wrote a new play out and said, here, this is what we're going to do. So I think in that regard, I think McDaniel has the advantage because he can create an offense to go up against the defense that he expects Saleh to do. On the same side of that, I think Saleh's got an advantage because he knows that McDaniel is creative. So he's going to be prepared for that creativity. He may not know what's coming, but he's got an opportunity to kind of sit there and go, don't put this by him because he's going to do it. So you may see one look and think he's going to go another way, and Saleh should be prepared to understand that and get that out to his players. So it's definitely going to be a chess match. I would give the advantage only to McDaniel because he can create something to go along with what he already knows.
I also agree with you there because, again, Saleh's scheme by nature is simplistic, that he rushes four-man and then he drops everybody else and hopes that the four-man rush can get there. And Mike McDaniel, God only knows what creative stuff he's going to be able to come up with to find creative ways to get the football in some of those talented players' hands. And that's where we have to go, Brian. I'm going to be honest. So the Tyreek Hill stuff, for at least from the Jets side, I'll tell you my side, came out of nowhere. When he became potentially available, we knew the Jets had been flirting with other receivers, DK Metcalf, A.J. Browns, Debo Samuels. They had done a lot of homework on the veteran wide receiver market and made a lot of calls. But when Tyreek Hill became available, seemingly out of nowhere, they're at a little bit of a contract impasse. He's going to be moved. I'm like, whoa, okay. I guess we'll see where he goes. And all of a sudden, Adam Schefter goes, there's two finalists, and it's the Jets and the Dolphins. I'm like, what? What the hell? I'm like, okay, here we go. We're on Tyreek Hill watch. That was like the craziest 2.5 hours or whatever that ended up being in my life. And I was hovering over the live stream like, all right, one way or the other. This news seems to be coming out. I'm just going to hover it and go live with whatever the news is. And I was like, man, seems like the Jets are going to get this done here. They have more draft picks and different assets that perhaps will acquiesce. And ultimately, the Chiefs allowed Tyreek Hill to pick, which I thought was very interesting. So I want to go to you, Brian. First off, what was your telltale of the Tyreek Hill experience where he became available, Dolphins finalists, and then boom, you guys get him? And then the second half of that, how has he lived up to the hype? You guys made him the highest paid wide receiver in all football at $30 million per year average. Has he lived up to the hype so far through a month of the season? So both of those.
Well, as far as the hype goes, yeah. I mean, you can't really complain when he's leading the league in receiving. He has more receiving yards than the entire Chicago Bears offense does in receiving.
Terrible over there.
He's been this is my thing is when this happened, like you, this happened so quick I couldn't process any of it.
Right.
You're trying to write about it, you're trying to keep up with it, you're trying to find out the parameters of the trade. All of this stuff is going on, and then you've got the fan side of you that's excited and still trying to process what's going on. Whose positions are you going to take? What's happening here? So it was completely shocking. But then you look at you look at what you traded for him, and you kind of smile and go, you can't get that kind of production from the draft picks that you'd have.
Right.
The biggest thing for me was I go back and I see a trade for Mike Wallace. I see a trade for Brandon Marshall.
Oh yeah,
those were big trades. They didn't work out because there was attitude. And I looked at Tyreek Hill and I went, this guy's got an ego, and I'm sorry, this guy's a team player. I am so shocked at how he is integrated into this team, has become a leader vocally. He's having you don't hear complaints from him. Now, will that change if later on this year he's not getting the touches and he's not putting up the numbers? It's very possible. But for right now, I mean, he's really kind of gone to bat for his teammates, and you got to enjoy it. You got to love it that he's been that kind of person for the team. So absolutely, right now, hey, it's not my money, so I don't really ever care about the financial ends of it because, as we've seen all across the NFL, you look at the New Orleans Saints, there's no such thing as a salary cap.
Right, 100%.
So my concern was, how is he going to integrate with the offense? How is he going to integrate with the team? Will he be a diva receiver? And so far, the only diva that he's been is promoting within the Dolphins organization and how these players are. So I think there's a lot of him rubbing off onto these other guys, and when you pair him with Jalen Waddle, these two are like brothers right now.
That was the thing that concerned me. To again, no, sour apples or anything. It was like, okay, it's a race. It's the Jets or Dolphins. Let's see who ends up winning this. When the Dolphins won it, I'm like, okay. And then they gave him all the money. It seemed like that was going to happen wherever he would have landed. And then ultimately, I was like, man, I wonder what Tua, who again, at a minimum has questions. Who knows? Maybe he becomes the franchise quarterback. Who knows what he's going to become? But I'm like, man, it's not Patrick Mahomes. What if he doesn't start getting the rock? Will he be? And it's funny you brought up those examples of Brandon Marshall, Mike Wallace, and other, deep dives into the pool to bring in a talented receiver who on paper sounds great, in Madden sounds phenomenal, but what about actuality? So I had some of those concerns, but so far we have heard none of them. Again, we're a month into the season. We'll see what kind of develops from there. And then, of course, we can't forget about Jalen Waddle. I think Robert Saleh described it, also throwing Raheem Mostert into it, a like 3x4 track team or something with all the speed that the Dolphins have in offense, which, of course, unlocks a lot of different opportunities there for Mike McDaniel. A lot of speed on this Dolphins offense.
Yeah, there's a lot of speed on the defensive side of the ball, too. But the offense is just crazy because Edmonds is a speed demon.
Mm-hmm.
Mostert is one of the top running backs in terms of speed. Then you got Waddle. Then you've got Hill, who's faster than all of them. It's very hard to, I'm still waiting. I don't even think that we've really touched the top peak of what this offense can be, for one reason, because the running game hasn't been very good. But I think once you get that done, and you actually have to play the run as a defense, how do you cover these guys? I just don't know how you cover them, because Tyreek Hill can blow two defenders off with no problem, bring Waddle up the center. And then if you really want to get into it and you want to start putting Gesicki out there in the tight end out there in pass routes, he's another one that's hard to cover. So then you've got, Cedric Wilson, you got Trent Sherfield, you've got, these other wide receivers that are out there. You put in Durham Smythe, and then you've got Chase Edmonds out of the backfield. There's a lot of offensive power that hasn't been utilized yet. And I think it's because the Mike McDaniel offense isn't completely in place yet. So we're still seeing that growth that we're hoping for, because without the running game, I don't think we're seeing a lot yet. But I think
that's what I wanted to hone in on is Gesicki. It's interesting. You guys slapped the franchise tag, which I from the outside, I wasn't sure whether or not they were going to do that. It seemed like at a base, there was going to be a lot of talented tight ends in theory. They were all going to hit. You had Schultz as a possibility, and Njoku, Gesicki, and so many others that, wow, we're going to flood. And then the franchise tag removed like all of them from the table as we were heading in. Again, only 71 yards on the season. Is there only so much ball to go around? Have they just not figured out how everyone's going to work it? I heard some of the rumors, and tell me if it's all malarkey, about potentially, Gesicki not fitting in. Trade rumors were floating around. Is that all nonsense, or was there some fire there too?
No, it's absolutely not nonsense, in my opinion. I mean, they've got him under contract for this year as a franchise tag player, like you said. But in the Mike McDaniel offense, the tight end is important as a blocking tight end, and that's where Mike Gesicki struggles the most at. Do I honestly, if you put it to me right now, is Mike Gesicki going to be traded before the trade deadline? I would not say he is, but I would not say he isn't. There's really nowhere to stand on that, because the thing is, and I wrote about this the other day, the Dolphins have to be able to get at least a third or better in a trade for Gesicki. Because if he goes and leaves in free agency, that's probably the compensation round that he'll be covered in, because of what he's going to make on the free agent market. Yeah. So do you keep him for the year, see if he can grow a little bit in the blocking scheme, and then try to sign him to another contract? I don't know if you can. The thing is Gesicki loves playing in Miami. And Mike McDaniel loves having Gesicki there. The guy's got so much talent. But right now, he's got to learn to block. And I think that's what we've been seeing through the first 4 weeks. Miami's keeping him back. They're letting him learn how to block. And I think that's what they need to do, because the success of their offense depends on that. If you look at what he did in San Francisco, George Kittle is a great blocking tight end. Yes, he's a fantastic pass catching tight end, but his first job has always been to block. And I think that's what we're waiting to see out of Gesicki. So where's he going to be? I don't know, but on November 1st, we'll have a better idea.
Well, let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. And Brian, I'll be honest, when Brian Flores, this hard-nosed guy, New England Patriot branch, I always feared the Dolphins defense when he was coming in, because he brought some juice. And when he left, I'm like, I wonder where that will leave the defense. How has the defense kind of evolved in a new era here with Mike McDaniel obviously taking over as the head coach overall, but Flores exiting? Where is the Dolphins defense maintained? Because they had a lot of talent and they did deliver during that Flores era.
Yeah, the Dolphins added a few players this year on defense. They didn't really lose anybody significant. I think the biggest loss was when they lost backup cornerback Trill Williams to a knee injury during training
Syracuse
camp.
Guy, baby.
You got it, yeah. And I had a couple conversations with his dad through Twitter, and it was very disappointing, because this was looking like it was going to be a great year for him. So when you look at this defense, you add Ingram, you add Trey Flowers. Those were really your big adds. The rest of the defense is pretty much the same as it was last year. The defensive coordinator is the same as it's been for the last 2 years, and that's Josh Boyer. Entering this season, a lot of Dolphins fans wondered, was it Flores who kind of held the defense together? Was he the one that designed the system, designed the game planning? We're not seeing a whole lot of difference between Flores and Boyer this year. So it kind of makes you lend your thoughts to, hey, Boyer was the guy. And I think he's definitely, whether it was Flores or not, he paid attention, because the defense is playing very well. not knock on wood here because I don't want to ruin anything for Dolphins fans, but this week we may not have Xavier Howard. We won't have Byron Jones. You guys have a really talented up-and-coming wide receiver group. If the Dolphins can shut down with their backup secondary, I think that's really going to speak volumes to what Boyer's doing defensively as their defensive coordinator. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, is this week is going to be a really good test for that. He's done great against Buffalo, the highest scoring team in the NFL going into that week 3 game, and he shut them down. I mean, that game was close. Yeah, I know they wilted in the sun and Dolphin Stadium's not fair, but you know what? You're supposed to prepare for that kind of stuff. You should have taken advantage of the first half when you had all your energy, and you didn't. So for me, go to the Baltimore game. They were up 21 points in the fourth quarter. I'm sorry, your defense blew it. Our defense didn't. We stepped up. So the defense I don't think is a problem for Miami, but the lack of cornerbacks right now is going to be a test.
Tell me if I have my analytics right here, so I'm not just looking at past years. Is it true that there is a lot of cover zero and a lot of blitzing for the Dolphins this year? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, there always has been since Brian Flores came in. He brought that system to Miami. They still use it. So you're going to see a lot of cover zero. I anticipate seeing a lot of blitzing this week from the Dolphins defense and a lot of different designs and some coverage schemes to try and force Zach Wilson into making some bad throws. So, I do see this. You guys are going to see the cover zero and the blitz schemes because they love to run them. The Miami is the team that blitzes the most in the NFL right now.
Let me ask you now. It works when you got excellent guys like Xavier Howard, who's a freak, and Byron Jones, who I know has been hurt. But like when you have really good cornerback play, you can man up. You can send the house because tight man coverage and the tight coverage in general allows those to have that symbiotic relationship. I wonder, because again, there are questions with health in the cornerback room heading into this game. Would the Dolphins at all hesitate because of the lack of potential, belief or trust in the guys with potential injuries back there? Then maybe we won't run as much blitzing or cover zero to try to protect those guys. Because if we do, and a Garrett Wilson or Elijah Moore, which Elijah Moore got the Dolphins last year on that big one, that was like a 70-yarder or something, maybe that could concern them with the talent that's in the Jets receiving room. What's your thoughts on that?
I think what we're going to see Miami do defensively this week is we're going to try the blitzes. We're going to try the cover zero. We're going to try and get pressure on Zach Wilson. We're going to, I would think, and if it was me, I would try to do it without using Brandon Jones, our safety, and without using Javon Holland, our safety. And what I would do is I would man them up with corner help on your 2 speed guys or your 2 best wide receivers, which would be Wilson and Moore. And then I'm going to try and get pressure on Wilson to force those throws because our 2 safeties are better than many cornerbacks in this league. They are solid. And Javon Holland is, by the end of the year, could be one of the elite top 3. He's
what a steal.
Good.
What a steal.
Yeah, he is. He's amazing. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try not to, if I don't have to blitz them, if I don't have to use them, that's what I'm going to try to do first. If I can't do that, then I'll use them in disguise schemes and design blitzes and stuff like that coming off the edge. But if I can keep those guys back, even if I'm playing center field with them, it's really going to put the pressure on Zach Wilson to make quality throws because those guys can be on them very quick. So that's how I would approach it. We'll see if Miami takes a different approach and just tries to get into Zach Wilson's face and disrupt him from the start and put him on edge.
Brian, the thing I look forward to most, and by the way, everybody, thanks for joining us. Keep dropping in your questions. We'll get to those at the end of our conversation. And make sure you support wherever you're watching. Like the video, hit subscribe down below. And, of course, support Brian Miller and Fin Fanatic. You can catch all their coverage leading in. I always highly advocate for that for Jet fans that are watching and listening in right now to make sure you get a full scope heading into the game. Now, Brian, the number one thing I've been looking forward to for these Jets-Dolphins matchups are our conversations. And the reason being is that, unfortunately, there hasn't been much of a rivalry back and forth. And it goes back to as I think we said this earlier this week, that the Jets Dolphins used to matter in a different way. And we almost say this every year until it's going to more. It's what I think a lot of modern Jet fans today, millennial Jet fans, I'll even call them, view the Jets Patriots like, that's our number one rival. Those are the people we always want to beat.
No, it's
and
not.
And it's too bad, because I feel like what really is supposed to be is the Jets Dolphins is mano a mano. That's the thing that we're supposed to hate each other, and that's supposed to be intensity. Unfortunately, we haven't seemingly had that in a long time, whether both teams haven't been good enough, and games like this to matter again. Jets 2-2, Dolphins 3-1. Like, there is some impact here in the divisional standings that there unfortunately hasn't been in a long time. Do you think this new chapter, potentially Mike McDaniel, who I think is fantastic, and then hopefully Robert's on his end, can that reignite this rivalry so we have these kind of moments? Because unfortunately it just hasn't happened in a long time, and Jet fans at least don't seem to be appreciating the rivalry for what it once was.
Well, I think it's very, I never really put together the whole Robert Saleh, Mike McDaniel thing.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting take, because that makes this rivalry that much better. But before we get there, Saleh needs to succeed to some degree.
Of course, absolutely.
McDaniel needs to succeed to some degree. This needs to be a longevity thing. And I think if that happens, then that is really going to hype it up as well. Don't sell yourself short, man. Okay, I don't really like you. Okay, you're a Jets fan.
Of course, yeah. We're hated enemies. Yes.
Yeah, the thing is there's a mutual respect and hatred that goes with Jets fans and Dolphins fans.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
We don't respect you. You don't respect us.
No, not at all.
Vice versa. The Patriots, nobody cares about the Patriots, because the rivalry isn't between the teams. It's about the fan base.
Right.
And if Patriots fans will jump ship as soon as they start losing, we should lose 90% of them by the end of this year. And the Bills fans are still, dealing with their own concussion syndromes from jumping on tables. And I've gotten into this with Bills Mafia, and I'm like, you guys don't really matter, because when the team's losing, the only thing you do is beat up on tables. You have nothing to say. Yeah. Jets fans, and I said this, I actually wrote an article about this. Jets fans, I have respect for, because you guys don't stop liking them, except for Fireman Ed, when you're losing. And Dolphins fans don't stop liking the Dolphins when they lose. We're not louder when we win. You're not louder when you win. We're the same. It's always the same. So I think this rivalry, it's going to get more intense if these two teams start finding success against each other.
Yeah, and that's because what we want.
Yeah. The best thing that can happen with this rivalry is for Saleh to be successful, McDaniel to be successful. Do I want to see it? Absolutely not. As a Dolphins fan, I want you guys to keep continuing to find quarterbacks as much as you guys want us to. So but that's fun. It's good. Yeah. That's why I talk to you. I don't talk to anybody else. I don't do it. I don't do Bill shows. I don't do Patriot shows because I don't respect them.
And you shouldn't. There's no reason to whatsoever, by the way. But that's the thing that for me, I feel like there is something here, and I want to see it succeed. But to succeed, we also want them not to succeed. So it's real
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm reading through your comments here. Somebody asked who the backup quarterback is this week. It'll be 7th round pick Skylar Thompson, who is going to be the active number 2 quarterback. And then they just signed Reed Sinnett, who was previously with the Dolphins, as a practice squad player. So those are your top 3. So just wanted to answer that question real quick.
No, yes, 100%. And let me ask you, because I heard this earlier, was it all to, and again, he had I think it was the 6 touchdowns against the Ravens, which is still like, whoa, that happened. I heard a lot of people's hot takes before the year were like, Tua's not going to finish the year because eventually McDaniel is going to go to Teddy Bridgewater. How invested are the Dolphins in Tua? And again, he's shown some things this season that may have already squashed any of that kind of chatter. But from the Dolphins' perspective, was that at all like a backdoor option? Hey, if this Tua thing doesn't work out, we're easily going to jump ship and jump to Teddy. Because Mike McDaniel, when he was talking about Teddy Bridgewater on Monday's presser, said there's a reason we made acquiring Teddy Bridgewater a priority as our backup quarterback, because we prepared for situations. Again, the hope for the best, expect the worst with any kind of injury situation. Was that at all ever close, or no? He was purely a break the glass backup in that situation.
No, I don't want to go and say that Tua was on a leash. I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
What I will say is this: the stuff that you've heard in the media about Tua and his relationship with Brian Flores is 100% accurate. It's not inflated. People that I've talked to behind the scenes that I will not repeat exactly what was said,
Mm-hmm.
that are with the organization, pretty much confirmed what you heard in the media. That was a relationship that wasn't there. I think when the Dolphins went into this offseason, Tua was their starter, but they had questions too. Chris Greer had questions because he's really only seeing what Brian Flores is putting out in front of him. Tua didn't do anything last year. They had a dual offensive coordinator system. They were not really playing an offensive system that was conducive to what Tua was capable of doing. So there was a lot of stuff going on. If you're a professional general manager and a new head coach, you want to make sure that you have a backup plan in place.
Yes.
There was a lot of questions with Tua, and I'm not gonna deny that. So if you're coming into the system and into this season and with this new system, you have to ask yourself, are we 100% sure that Tua is the guy? Well, no. So let's bring in a capable backup in case he's not. Let's bring somebody in. We can't go with the injury route here. We can't say,
right,
well, he's injury prone. Let's bring in some. Teddy Bridgewater's got a pretty extensive history of injury too.
That's true. Yeah.
I think this was really more of, we are going to run Mike McDaniel's system. He's going to give Tua the best opportunity to succeed. We're going to bring in David Bevel, who is the quarterback's coach. He has been great with quarterbacks. Let's see if we can coach him up before we have to make a decision next year. If you're going to fail with the quarterback, you fail in your first year as a head coach, because then you get to pick your next one.
Yeah.
So Teddy Bridgewater was not a break glass quarterback. He's legitimately here to compete. Tua stepped up. Tua's been playing exceptionally well through 3 games. So,
yeah,
it's Miami's getting a look to see what he can be. The injury's got to be a little bit of a concern too.
I'm going to use this comment to launch a greater conversation. Jets 830, giving you a compliment, Brian, I suppose, in a backhanded way. You talk better than McDaniel. He talks like he's in the first grade. But I want to use this to talk about McDaniel as a whole, because he's a very interesting personality. We heard about some of the stuff in the offseason, like the practice player gets to wear the orange jersey and picks the music. I heard a lot of people call that out and say that's childish. What are we doing here? And again, he's just in general. So I just want to use this comment to launch into Mike McDaniel as a whole. He's a quirky guy. You listen to him. He talks in a different way. There's a little bit of a hipness there because he's talking about the latest Yeezys and other things of that nature. What is your take on Mike McDaniel? And does it really matter, I guess, if you're just winning games? So maybe it just doesn't matter at all.
I'm going to be honest with you, man.
Yeah.
I just read this last comment on here that said Fireman Ed didn't stop liking the Jets. Let's stop taking pot shots at a guy that's not here. But then again, why would a Dolphins guy show any class? And I kind of lost what you said right there at the end.
No,
I was laughing.
okay. Yeah, no, I know.
Fireman
Let
Ed
me
used
throw
to be
that
a
up. Keep it
Dolphins fan,
simple,
and he jumped ship there too. So
again, the yearbook photo of Fireman in the Dolphins gear, I just can't get past. I'm sorry, keep it simple.
I'm not taking a pot shot. You guys should be like, wait a second, this guy jumped ship already. So no. So what did you say at the tail end? Oh, you were talking about McDaniel and his quirky.
Yeah, just McDaniel in general. He's a quirky guy. What has been the response from Dolphins fans? Because like I said, from a national perspective, there's been like criticism, for lack of a better word. They just saw they thought it was gimmicky, high schoolish, is what people were saying about the jersey thing.
I think we're seeing a genuine guy.
Okay.
That he's a Yale graduate. The guy is smart as a whip.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, listening to him talk, I've gone back and forth with some fans going, I don't see the Yale part.
Right. It's very, yeah.
He's refreshing in the sense that there's no ego about him. There's nothing about him that says I'm better than you. He's just a guy that's genuinely excited to be in this job, that he appreciates the job. He has fun with the media. I think the day that he showed up for his first press conference during training camp, he took a selfie with the media guys. He's a breath of fresh air. After we dealt with Adam Gase, who wouldn't say anything to anybody. We dealt with Brian Flores, who tried to play off the Bill Belichick attitude. We had Joe Philbin, who, didn't really. I love Joe Philbin. He was such a great guy, and I've met him like 3 or 4 times and talked to him. But when you interview him, you kind of felt like you were interviewing a rock. There was very little personality to him. And then you had Tony Sperano, who I love talking to, but the guy scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Dan Campbell scared the hell out of me when I talked to him. This guy's so totally different. It's refreshing. And I think that's a genuine personality that you're seeing. And I think that's why the players are so enamored with playing for this guy, because there's no BS. He's not telling them stuff that they don't believe in, because he's telling them, let's do this. Take, for example, the Ravens game. They walk into the locker room at halftime. He didn't come out and start yelling, saying you guys aren't doing your job. He says, hey, this is adversity. Let's see how you go back out there and deal with adversity. And he put his faith and his trust in them, made his adjustments, and the players executed, and they won. So I think this is a great guy that, I think could really be around a while if he can find success. He's not a gimmick.
Yeah, and that's my thing, is that
seems like a gimmick, but he's not.
Yeah, right. Some people question the quirkiness, but I'm like, I think it's just genuineness. I just think that's who he is, and if he's unabashedly as himself, that's something people should appreciate. Brian, we're going to circle back to something we started this conversation on. That was Tua, because again, I understand we're doing a live stream and people are checking in and out, and new people are entering the conversation as we do this. So I see this from Joe M, and he's looking for a real answer, is what he says. Brian, how do you feel about the way the Dolphins handled the Tua situation during the Bills game? Do you think they should have taken him out? And again, Joe saying, looking for a real answer here. Again, circling back to this conversation, because again, he's already been ruled out for this game.
Yeah, Joe, real quick, since you weren't here at the beginning, I was a paramedic for 22 years. I have dealt with back injuries, neck injuries, critical care services, neurological step-down units. I've dealt with paralyzed victims. So this is something that I can speak with a little bit of I wouldn't say expertise, but experience. Mm-hmm. When Tua went out of the game, my first thought was like everybody else, he's got a concussion. When he got up and he started to stagger, I was like, yeah, okay, he's got a concussion. When they came out and said it was a back injury, I went, oh, good. I didn't think anything of it being a concussion, because a few plays later he had been hit, and you could see he kind of came up a little gingerly from that. But I can tell you from experience, a back injury will make you stumble. If you get that sciatic pain, low back pain that shoots through your legs, I'm 53 years old. When I get out of bed, sometimes I have that and I'll stagger. And my wife will look at me and go, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. It didn't bother me when they said he cleared the concussion protocols. When he was able to clear the concussion protocols on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday leading up to that game, I was pretty confident that what he was dealing with was more back spasm and shooting pain into his nerves in his legs than I was a concussion. So I was perfectly fine with him coming back. When he came back in, we obviously didn't see him, staggering around during the game. He hit Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, I think it was, on a deep pass. And he played fine. So there was nothing lingering that we saw on the field. And it was something that I was kind of paying a lot of attention to. So when they said back injury, my experience said, yeah, it's probably a back injury. So I could see where that would look both ways. For what it's worth, that's just my opinion on it, since you asked.
100%. And again, just circling back to a lot of this here. Jets 830 jumps back in. The new mastermind of the AFC East. Could Mike McDaniel be taking that title? I know Bill Belichick's looking a little questionable over there in New England.
Well, I guess when you hire a defensive coordinator to be your offensive coordinator, you don't look as smart. Josh McDaniels isn't doing a whole lot out there in Las Vegas right now. Is he the new mastermind? They call him Boy Genius. Yeah. I got to say, from a Dolphins fan perspective, this offense is a lot more exciting than what it's been in the last 15, 20 years, since probably the Marino days. The use of motion, the creativity is something that just blows my mind, and I absolutely love it. I'm not going to anoint him anything, because we're going into week 5. Talk to me when we're in week 18 and we're still talking about potentially being in the playoffs. Talk to me next year when teams haven't figured it out. Because if we really want to go back to it, we can go back to 2000. I think it was 3 or something. With no, it's not. It was 2009. I don't know.
The Brady injury years that we're talking about.
Tony Sperano in the.
Yes.
In the Wildcat, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so brilliant!"
Right, Ronnie Brown and everybody. Right,
the Ravens knew how to defeat it, and it never happened again. So, I want to see the consistency. I like where it's going. I like the creativity, but I'm not going to say that he's a genius just yet.
An early theme of the Jet season. Yeah, right. And I do too. An early theme of the Jet season has been receipts. And Robert Saleh brought it up after the first game. And a lot of people went, oh boy, like bringing up this, if you don't start winning immediately, you're going to get the wrath of the New York media. And of course they get the win. So then it ends up cashing in. a Dolphins fan or someone jumping in here, Samuel on YouTube, saying, do you think Tua is making media and experts look bad because they are the ones who picked Miami to be 1-3 and gave Tua the Josh Rosen treatment after we drafted him? From day one, they never seemed to give Tua a fair shake. Is it time for Dolphins fans to collect receipts, or once again, too soon, and especially with the injury kind of casting a murky cloud here, we're not really sure what's going to happen over the next batch of weeks?
Well, I definitely think that the concussion didn't help unite anybody. This is a divided topic. There's a lot of Dolphins fans that are on the fence. There's some that are not on the fence and think he needs to go. And there's a lot that think he needs to stay, and he's the answer. For me personally, he hasn't. What has he done? He's leading the NFL right now. Well, in rating, he was the number one quarterback after 2 weeks. Is that enough to convince me that he's the answer? No, because I think he can be, but you got to prove it. So I was not a fan of Tua's coming out of college. I was a Justin Herbert fan. I was a Joe Burrow fan. Tua was way down on my list. In fact, I was like, don't draft this guy, even if he's, at 18 or 19. I was not a fan. When he came to Miami, I saw the mechanics there that, okay, I can see a little bit. I went back and watched some tape, and I'm like, okay, I can see a little bit of why the Dolphins were taking him. I still wasn't a fan at 5. But this is a guy that would have been potentially the number 1 overall draft pick if not for the hip injury. Yeah. And that's not me saying that. That's the same media that have been criticizing him for 3 years.
Correct.
That hip injury doesn't happen. Is Joe Burrow going to be the quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals? I don't know. So there's a lot of different things that play out in there. I'm not convinced. If any of your Jets fans say Zach Wilson's the answer after 2 years, you're wrong too. Because we don't know yet. So for me, there's things to like about Tua, and there's a lot of things that I don't like about Tua. I don't like the decisions that he makes sometimes. I don't like he's getting a lot better with his read progressions, and his accuracy has never been a question. It still isn't. But he's injured because he holds the ball too long. He's injured because on that play that he got hurt on, he had all the time in the world. Move out of the pocket, throw the ball away, and move on to the next play. Instead, he sat there. He let that guy wrap him up, didn't even try to defend himself from it, and then he got slammed to the ground. So there's a lot of stuff that Tua's got to do before he can become a franchise quarterback without question. Do I think that the media is being harsh on him? Not really, because they have been since the day he walked in the door.
Fair enough. NY2FLA, a huge Jets fan and supporter of this channel. Hey, Boy Green and Brian, what weakness of Jets should Finns take advantage of? And same question the other way. So, Brian, I'll let you go first. What is a weakness on the Jets that you fully plan on the Dolphins taking advantage of and should be circled? Then we'll do the same thing for the other side.
Okay. From a defensive standpoint, the weakness to me is Zach Wilson's ability to make quick decisions. He can get flustered. And I think if I'm the defensive coordinator, I am making sure that pressure's on him. I'm going to put the onus on him to beat me making quick dump-off decisions and check-down reads. If he can do that, Zach Wilson's going to have success against the defense because they're going to come after him. Offensively, I am attacking the young cornerbacks. I know Sauce Gardner's playing really well. You haven't played Tyreek Hill. You haven't played Jalen Waddle. I'm going to try to get you to play those two guys, and I'm going to try to beat you. And if you can beat me there, then my only option is to go underneath and hit guys like Trent Sherfield or hit Mike Gesicki or try to run the ball. So I'm going to test him. That's not a weakness in my mind. I think it's a strength, but I'm going to test your youth at the corners first.
Yeah, and I'm going to, kind of echo some of those comments because it's almost for us, from the Jets' perspective, strength. Like the Jets' corners have been spectacular. DJ Reed has been special. Sauce has been really good so far. They have not played the speed of a Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle yet. And the Dolphins, their wide receivers are dynamic. So strength. Who wins that battle as two heavyweights going in trading blows? That could very well decide the game from that perspective. Also, I got to imagine Teddy Bridgewater is going to have to look at Jacoby Brissett's level of success against the Jets in week 2 because, again, Jacoby Brissett is not this dynamic elite athlete that's going to beat you in the way that Lamar Jackson could, and he had a lot of success against this Jets defense. If Mike McDaniel is a lot more creative than the Browns. Even Kevin Stefanski, who I like a lot, he's even more creative than him. So I think he'll be able to cook up even more ways. But that is probably a basis of success they'll build a game plan around for a backup quarterback. Because again, they're not going to ask him to be Tua. They're going to ask Teddy to be Teddy. And we will see ultimately if that's good enough with some Mike McDaniel magic sprinkled on top. That could be a major difference as well.
Yeah.
Let's see here. All right, your final comments, guys. Then we're going to let Brian go here. So if you have any final ones, feel free to throw them in here. Again, I don't know if you have anything on this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the Brian Flores lawsuit stuff, reason he gets fired, does any of that matter to you, or have you had enough of all that malarkey this offseason?
It did great for my page views.
Yeah, I bet so. Yeah, popular. Yeah.
We haven't really discussed that. It was I'm going to take the racism out of it because that's not anybody who says that the Dolphins were racist, made a racist decision with him. You don't know the Dolphins. Chris Greer is an African-American. They have, he was an African-American coach, but you know what? African-American coaches will fail sometimes too. Stephen Ross is very big in the community. And he started the Rise Initiative years before Brian Flores came in, which is to promote African-American coaches and executives. So I take that out. What he wants to do with people like Houston or whoever else and used him as a Rooney Rule thing, that's on them. That's not on Miami. So I discount that in terms of Miami. As far as why he was fired, do I think it was because of the cheating? Maybe. I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
Do I think it could have played a role in it? Yeah, probably. At least it set up the tensions within the organization between Greer and Flores. Now, Greer and Flores didn't get along very well, and I know that for a fact. And they butted heads quite a bit. And then Brian Flores butted heads with Stephen Ross, and he butted heads with some of the other executives in the building. So there was a lot of animosity in there. There was some player issues in there as well. Tua Tagovailoa, the same thing. So there was a lot of things going on that kind of led to the firing. And then Brian Flores just blew it all up. He wasn't going out quietly. So I don't know. I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into his lawsuit as far as it goes towards Miami because, hey, the Dolphins took their lumps. They got caught cheating. I don't like cheating. I'm against it with Bill Belichick. Stephen Ross is suspended right now. The ownership transition that was approved by the NFL is now gone because Beal is now out. So, hey, you know what? You do this, you're going to suffer. And the Dolphins are suffering for that. They lost their first-round draft pick next year and another one. So it is what it is.
All right, let's go to NY2FLA. Again, we appreciate the support. This is a YouTube super chat, so throwing a little tip into our tin can. We appreciate it. This question for Brian. If the Dolphins continue to play playoff quality football, I'm going to edit it a little bit here. What positional needs would you trade for? Again, essentially, if the Dolphins are more advanced than they think, they could compete for the AFC East. Maybe there's some moves they can make on top of that of something that is potentially missing. And then separately, what scares you most about the Jets heading into the game? Thank you, NY2FLA, for the comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. For me, what scares me, I'm not really too concerned about the Jets defense. I think Miami can draw up a game plan to counter that. I think we've got a lot of talent offensively that can keep that close, even with Bridgewater. What scares me is your receivers, Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, against what will essentially be second, even third string cornerbacks for the Dolphins this week because Brian Jones is out. We don't know about Xavier Howard yet. So we're talking guys like Kader Kohu. We're talking guys like Nick Needham, maybe an Elijah Campbell. These are the guys that are going to come in and play against good quality wide receivers. So to me, again, it goes back to getting pressure on Zach Wilson and forcing him into making errors. So when I look at this game, what bothers me, what I'm going to be paying the most attention to is when the Dolphins are on defense, how they're going to man up and stop the Jets offense. I'm not worried about your running game because our front four are fantastic against that. But the secondary is going to be a big challenge for Miami. As far as your other question, if I was the Dolphins and I was going to make a trade, well, right now I'd make a trade for a cornerback, even if it's just a second tier type quarterback. Cornerback, that would be my first priority. I don't need wide receivers. Our offensive line is actually playing pretty well. We're one of the better teams pass blocking. We need to do better at run protection and run blocking. But cornerback's my biggest concern right now. So if I'm making a trade and I'm going to invest in anything, that's probably where I'm going to invest my capital.
Thank you, NY2FLA, again, for that question. We really appreciate it. Now, let me ask you, Brian, to finish us off here. It's prediction time. We're here on a Wednesday. How do you see this one playing out? And I love this. It's my favorite bit of our chats. Yeah, right. Going through a tunnel. So give us your prediction. I will say this right off the get-go. I think, although both games were close last year, I think they were both a touchdown loss for the Jets in both of those games, if I remember off the top of my head. I think the game's going to be close. We'll see what that ultimately means on either side winning. But, yeah, how do you see this playing out?
I think it's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be closer than what people think. I think the Dolphins are favored by 3 right now.
That's correct. Yep, on the road. Yep.
That's probably a pretty good
it's lower than I thought. I'll be honest. From my perspective, when the line was about to come out, even though the Tua thing was coming in, I thought the Dolphins would be favored by 5.5. So when I saw the 3 line, I went, wow, okay. It must be an overreaction to the Tua line, I assume. But that one surprised me a little, I'll be honest. I thought they should be favored by more.
Yeah, I thought that they would have been as well. I think the Tua thing plays a little bit into that as well. I think the lack of the corner in the secondary with Byron Jones, question marks about Xavier Howard play into that to a degree, obviously. I think that this game, if the Dolphins secondary cannot stop your wide receivers and Zach Wilson is able to get rid of that ball, I think it's going to be a long day for Miami's defense, and it's really going to come down to, like you said, it's going to be an offensive game back and forth at that point. As far as I look for the Dolphins to probably enter the fourth quarter with a lead, I would assume if we can get to the fourth quarter, I think this is where Miami probably will benefit because they are very, very well conditioned. We saw that against Buffalo. We saw that against the Ravens practicing in that heat. It's not going to be as hot, obviously, in New York as it was in Miami.
Right.
But your body doesn't go from playing very well in the fourth quarter in 90, 100-degree weather and then go to New York and play in 60, 70-degree weather and break down in the fourth quarter. It just doesn't happen. So I would be shocked if we get to the fourth and it's close. I'm going to tip my hat towards Miami's stamina and their ability to play in the fourth quarter and close it out. That being said, I'm not going to discount the Jets playing at home. So I'm going to say it's probably going to be close, maybe a 24-21 game, maybe a 24-20 type game. And I don't think we're going to see a lot of the scoring come. And I think we're probably going to see early scoring in the first, probably 7, maybe 10 points, 10-7 score, maybe a 7-2 or 7-3 score. And I don't think we'll see anything in the second. Maybe a field goal or 2 in the third. I think the fourth quarter is when we're going to really start seeing some of the points go on the board.
And again, based on this season, I'm sure Jet fans would love to see the Dolphins have a lead in the fourth quarter because both of their wins have been fourth quarter comebacks. So I'm sure that's what Jet fans are hoping for, but I'm not so sure that is sustainable to continue to do that. Brian, I look forward to these chats. We'll be doing it not too long away.
We got the last game of the season this year.
That's right. I know. It's interesting because we've had an interesting juxtaposition over the last couple of years. It's almost always been Jets Bills to start a season, and normally they normally cap end it, and then we have Bills on the back end. So finally breaking it up, mixing it up a little bit, and hopefully we're talking about it having a divisional impact right now. Hopefully at the end of the season, once again, it's not draft implications, and there's a little juice, which would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, real quick for your listeners out there. If you guys, we didn't get to all your questions, but if you do want them answered, please feel free to email me at FinFanatic. It's PHINPHAN Fanatic, FinFanatic23@yahoo.com, or reach out to me at Twitter at FinFanatic on Twitter, and I'll answer your questions. I don't have a problem with that. So if I didn't get to it, or you just don't like me and you want to tell me that, that's fine too, guys. I get that a lot. But feel free. If I didn't get to it, please don't hesitate to ask. So. Anyways, that's it.
No, 100%. I know we didn't get to everyone's question. So again, Brian's phenomenal. And again, he is very open to answering your questions. So we're going to have a lot of Jets, Dolphins, trash talk. So even if it's not a question, if you just want to throw some shade over there, some hate, I absolutely appreciate it. So
I have
feel free to send it.
skin.
Yeah, great. Well, let's test that.
I challenge you to call me a name that I haven't already been called.
Beautiful. That's what we're looking for. If we can make that challenge accepted, we'll appreciate it. Brian, thanks, pal. We'll check back in later this season.
Anytime, Paul. Thank you.
There he is, Brian Miller of FinFanatic. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back.